The rain drummed a steady rhythm against the glass walls of Langley's sublevel archives, a place few had reason to visit anymore. It was past midnight, the corridors half-lit and eerily silent, the hum of fluorescent lights echoing like the breath of ghosts. Behind a biometric-locked steel door, Martin Keller, a weary CIA archivist with more years behind him than ahead, was finishing his nightly audit. He had long since stopped asking why certain files were redacted, buried, or mislabeled. His job was simply to keep history in order, especially the kind the world wasn't meant to see. But tonight, as he scrolled through the terminal's index of declassified material, something caught his eye, a corrupted entry flickering back to life on its own. Project Seraph, 1986. The name meant nothing to him, but the access level, Omega Black, was reserved for operations that officially never happened. His pulse quickened. Curiosity, that dangerous itch, overrode caution. The drawer hissed open with a metallic sigh, and inside lay a single red folder, sealed with 2 wax insignias that hadn't been used in decades. Keller broke the seals. Inside were grainy photographs, 2 young agents standing beside a burning jet wreck, both faces tagged with "deceased." One bore the name Michael Reeves, the other Ethan Hunt Sr. Keller frowned. Reeves. He remembered that name from a training lecture on fallen heroes. He flipped through the documents. Joint operations, Soviet infiltration missions, mind control research labeled cognitive obedience experiments. A chill settled over him. This wasn't an ordinary black op. It was an attempt to create perfect human weapons. The kind that didn't question orders. The kind that never stopped. Keller slid the folder under a scanner, transferring the images to a secure drive. But halfway through the process, the power flickered. The lights dimmed, and the hum of the air system died. He froze. Only the faint click of approaching footsteps broke the silence, steady, deliberate, coming closer through the hallway beyond the reinforced glass. Keller yanked the drive free, stuffing it into his jacket. He reached for his phone, but the screen was dead. The power outage wasn't random. It was a breach. The door to the archive hissed open a few inches, the electronic lock overridden. Through the slit of darkness, a red laser sight appeared, tracing across the shelves, inching toward him. Keller ducked behind a cabinet, trembling, clutching the drive to his chest. The last thing he saw before the muzzle flash erupted was a figure in black tactical gear with no insignia, only a small emblem stitched on the shoulder, a black cross. Half a world away, in the quiet isolation of British Columbia, Keanu Reeves sat alone in a cabin surrounded by mist and pine. His life was simple now. Chopping wood, fixing bikes, feeding the stray dog that had adopted him. The man once known as a covert agent for international crisis response had long buried that version of himself. But when his satellite phone blinked, something it hadn't done in 5 years, his stillness cracked. The message was short, encoded in a cipher only 2 people in the world could recognize. The past has awakened. They found Seraph. For a long moment, he just stared at it, his hand frozen midair. Then he stood, went to the small wooden chest under the floorboards, and lifted it open. Inside, an old Beretta, a worn-out leather ID tag marked R73, and a faded photograph of his father, Michael Reeves, smiling beside a young Ethan Hunt. Keanu's jaw tightened. The world had forgotten Project Seraph, but his father never did. He holstered the gun and stepped out into the rain. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Tom Cruise, now IMF's field commander, was finishing a briefing in Washington. His assistant rushed in, pale-faced. "Sir, someone breached the CIA archives using your credentials." Tom froze mid-step. "That's impossible. I haven't accessed Langley in weeks." The assistant swallowed hard. "Security found your clearance ID in the terminal logs, and a dead archivist." Tom's expression darkened. Someone wanted him implicated. He glanced at the holographic screen showing a burning folder marked Project Seraph. That name again, one even the IMF database didn't contain. "Who else knows?" he asked. "No one, sir." Tom exhaled slowly. "Good. Let's keep it that way." But deep inside, unease crept in. There were too many ghosts surfacing lately, and this one had his mentor's shadow written all over it. The rain intensified outside Langley, washing away footprints and blood alike. The assassin who'd pulled the trigger stepped into a black SUV, tossing a lighter onto the dashboard. The flame caught on the stolen folder, curling the edges until all that remained was a single line of text. The assassin watched it burn, whispering softly through the comms to an unseen handler. If they remember the mission, the world burns again. The SUV vanished into the storm, leaving only smoke, ash, and the faint echo of a forgotten war returning to life. Berlin never slept, it just hid its heartbeat beneath the rain. The city pulsed with life even past midnight, a restless blur of neon and steam. Down an alley thick with fog and graffiti, a black motorcycle slid to a stop, its engine cutting off with a growl that echoed between the old brick walls. Keanu Reeves stepped off, his coat drenched from the downpour, eyes sharp beneath the brim of his hood. He had followed a signal, encrypted coordinates hidden inside the message he'd received the night before. It led him here, an abandoned safe house once used by Allied intelligence during the Cold War. The place looked dead, but Keanu knew better. Dead buildings still had ghosts. Inside, the safe house smelled of rust, dust, and forgotten secrets. He swept the room, pistol drawn, every footstep cautious. A typewriter sat crooked on a table beside an ashtray filled with decades-old cigarette butts. On the wall hung an IMF tactical map with red lines converging over Moscow, the same markings from his father's last known mission. Keanu ran his fingers over the map, tracing the word Seraph. Before he could think further, a door creaked behind him. Instinct kicked in. He spun, weapon raised, only to meet another pistol aimed squarely at his chest. Tom Cruise stood in the doorway, soaked to the bone, eyes cold and assessing. "Step away from the map," Tom ordered, voice calm but edged with command. Keanu didn't move. "You're the one who's been following me." Tom's jaw tightened. "You broke into Langley using my credentials. An archivist is dead. You want to tell me why?" Keanu lowered his gun slightly. "If I broke into Langley, you'd know. I don't steal from ghosts." Tom's stare hardened. "Then explain why your father's file resurfaced the same night someone tried to frame me." The tension between them was a storm of its own. Two men cut from the same cloth, disciplined, dangerous, but carrying different kinds of scars. For a moment, silence stretched like a wire ready to snap. Then it did. Tom struck first, twisting Keanu's wrist and sending his pistol clattering across the floor. Keanu countered, throwing Tom into the wall, disarming him with a fluid motion. The fight that followed was not of rage but of skill, a brutal dance of precision. Every blow met with equal force, every move countered in perfect symmetry. Tom drove a knee into Keanu's ribs. Keanu responded with a sweep that sent Tom crashing into the table. The typewriter hit the ground, keys scattering like metal rain. They paused, both breathing hard, staring each other down through the fogged air. "You fight like someone trained you to expect betrayal," Tom said. Keanu's voice was low. "Because betrayal runs in my blood." Before either could make another move, a low hum filled the air, unfamiliar, mechanical, growing louder. Both men turned as the windows shattered inward, flames flashing from outside. A drone exploded against the far wall, tearing the map apart in a burst of debris. The ceiling shook. Automatic gunfire rattled from the rooftops. Men in black tactical suits rappelling down, masks bearing the insignia of the Black Cross. Keanu and Tom dove for cover, instinctively moving in sync despite their mistrust. Tom grabbed a submachine gun from a fallen attacker. Keanu slid a combat knife across the floor, embedding it in another man's thigh. The air filled with smoke and chaos. Their eyes met across the wreckage, an unspoken truce formed in a heartbeat. Whatever they weren't enemies anymore. Not tonight. As the last of the attackers fell, flames licked at the walls, devouring years of classified history. Keanu grabbed the scorched half of the map, folding it as Tom reloaded. Sirens wailed in the distance. "We need to move," Keanu said. "More will come." Tom nodded, scanning the wreckage. "Who were they?" "The same people who killed that archivist," Keanu replied. "They call themselves the Black Cross. They're not after us. They're after what our fathers tried to destroy." Tom frowned. "You think this is connected to Seraph?" Keanu looked out the broken window into the rain. "I don't think. I know. My father didn't die in that explosion, Tom. He vanished with your mentor." For a moment, neither spoke. The flames cast long shadows against the cracked walls. Two men bound by a mission older than either of them understood. Tom finally broke the silence. Then we find them, and we finish what they started. Keanu's gaze hardened, the city lights reflecting off his rain-soaked face. If we're going back into that world, you better be ready for what we find, because nothing stays buried forever. As they disappeared into the storm, the camera panned back to the ruins of the safe house. Amid the ashes, a single unburned photograph fluttered on the floor. Michael Reeves and Ethan Hunt Sr. standing side by side, both smiling. On the back, scrawled in fading ink, were 3 words. "The mission lives." The wind howled like a living thing across the endless white plains of Siberia. A cargo plane, battered by sleet, sliced through the night sky before dipping low toward a frozen wasteland marked only by a line of snow-capped ridges. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Keanu sat opposite Tom, both bundled in tactical gear, faces lit by the dim red glow of the cabin lights. Neither man had spoken much since Berlin. Words were unnecessary when ghosts were involved. Between them lay a wrinkled half-map, rescued from the flames, a torn piece of history that pointed to a forgotten Soviet listening post near the Arctic Circle. It was the last known location tied to Project Seraph. Keanu ran his gloved fingers over the coordinates, eyes distant. "My father came here," he said quietly. "If he's alive, this is where the truth died." Tom studied him, his expression caught between skepticism and something close to empathy. "If he's alive," he said, "we're walking into the kind of secret people kill to protect." The plane touched down on an ice-covered runway, engines screaming against the wind. The moment the cargo door opened, the cold hit like a wall, sharp, merciless, alive. They stepped out into the blizzard, moving across the frozen tundra with snow crunching under their boots. Ahead, through the fog, the outline of an abandoned Soviet compound emerged, a complex of crumbling radio towers and rusted domes buried beneath decades of frost. The entrance was half-sealed by ice. Tom pried it open with a crowbar, and they slipped inside. The interior was a tomb of silence, metal walls dripping condensation, corridors lined with broken monitors and flickering light bulbs that somehow still clung to life. Old propaganda posters peeled from the walls, the faces of forgotten soldiers staring at them through the shadows. As they descended deeper, Keanu felt the air grow warmer, the hum of old generators echoing faintly beneath their feet. It was as if the place hadn't died. It had been waiting. In a central chamber, they found a room frozen in time. File cabinets stood like gravestones, and a dusty reel projector sat on a steel table beside a row of old film canisters. On the wall, stenciled in fading Cyrillic letters, were the words, "They wanted to control obedience." Keanu brushed snow off one of the canisters and loaded it into the projector. The machine whirred to life with a groan, casting flickering images across the room. Grainy black and white footage appeared, 2 young men in military coats, standing beside scientists and soldiers. Michael Reeves, Ethan Hunt Sr. Their faces were solemn, haunted. A narrator's voice in Russian droned over the footage, "Project Seraph, psychological reconditioning for cognitive obedience. The future of warfare is not machines, it is minds." Then, the film changed. The same men now stood in front of burning equipment, their expressions desperate. Michael Reeves turned to the camera, shouting over the chaos. His voice cracked through the static, translated crudely by subtitles. "They've crossed the line. They want soldiers who can't say no. We have to end this now." The reel cut to black. The silence that followed was heavy enough to feel like gravity. Tom's jaw clenched. "They tried to stop it," he said. Keanu stared at the frozen screen, his breath visible in the cold air. They were betrayed. Then, a faint click echoed behind them, a speaker crackling to life. The lights in the chamber flickered. A voice, deep and worn, filled the room. "You finally found me, boys." Keanu froze. The voice was unmistakable. He turned toward the shadows at the far end of the room. From the darkness, a man stepped forward, older, gaunt, but unmistakably alive. His beard was streaked with gray, his eyes tired yet burning with the same fierce intelligence Keanu remembered from childhood. "Dad," Keanu breathed, disbelief and grief crashing through his voice. Michael Reeves smiled faintly. "You were never supposed to find this place, son." Tom instinctively raised his weapon, his spy instincts fighting his humanity. How are you alive? The plane crash. Seraph. It was all erased. Michael's gaze hardened. Because the people who erased it didn't want the world to know what we created, or what we destroyed. The ground rumbled faintly beneath them as the old generators surged to life, humming like an awakening beast. Blue lights flickered through the walls, illuminating strange pods half buried in ice, rows of them, each holding motionless human silhouettes suspended in cryogenic liquid. Tom stepped back, eyes wide. My God, are those? Michael nodded slowly. The first generation of Seraph subjects, soldiers whose wills were rewritten. We thought we'd ended it, but someone kept it alive. Keanu's voice was low, trembling with anger. Who? Michael looked up at him, a shadow crossing his face. You already know his name. Before Keanu could respond, a distant explosion echoed from above, shaking the structure. Michael's expression turned grim. They found us. You need to leave now. Tom grabbed Keanu's arm, pulling him toward the exit as the compound lights flickered red. Overhead, the roar of incoming aircraft filled the air. The Black Cross had arrived. As they fled into the blizzard, the camera lingered on Michael Reeves, standing alone in the flickering blue light. He turned toward the nearest pod, placing a trembling hand on the glass where a frozen soldier's face stared back at him. His reflection merged with it. I tried to end you once, he whispered. Don't make me fail again. The alarms wailed louder, drowning in the storm outside. The storm had broken over the city, rain cascading down the glass facade of a skyscraper where Keanu and Tom stood in the penthouse of an abandoned corporate tower. The wind howled through shattered windows, carrying the metallic tang of blood and betrayal. The soft flicker of emergency lights painted their faces in cold shades of blue and red, the same colors flashing on the laptop screen between them. What they had just uncovered wasn't a data breach or a secret operation. It was a setup. Every mission they'd ever been on, every classified file they'd ever trusted, had been orchestrated by someone within their own ranks. Keanu clenched his jaw as the realization sank in. This was personal. Tom walked toward the wide window, the city lights reflecting in his eyes like fragments of broken truth. It was never about the mission, he muttered, voice trembling between anger and disbelief. It was about us. Behind him, Keanu stood still, his posture rigid but calm, that dangerous calm before a storm. We were the mission, Keanu said softly, stepping forward. The words hung in the air like a blade. A single file on the laptop blinked open, a video feed. The static cleared, revealing the face of someone they both knew too well. Agent Marcus Hale, their commander, their friend, the man who'd recruited them into this operation. Only now his face carried a smirk neither of them recognized. You did good work, gentlemen, Marcus's voice echoed through the speakers, smooth and cruel. But the truth is, we never needed you to succeed. We just needed you to lead the wolves to the gate. Keanu's eyes narrowed, his fingers tightening around his weapon as Tom slammed his fist on the table. You used us, he shouted. Marcus chuckled faintly, the kind of laugh that chilled to the bone. Used? No, Tom. I honored you. You were the best. And every mission you completed built the cover for something much larger. You just never realized you were the distraction. The screen flickered again, and behind Marcus, the unmistakable logo of the rogue agency appeared, a shadow phoenix, symbol of the very organization they thought they had destroyed years ago. Lightning flashed through the window as silence fell between the two men. Tom's breath came heavy, his mind racing with rage, guilt, and disbelief. Keanu slowly walked closer to the window, rain dripping from his hair, his reflection merging with the skyline. I trusted him, Tom whispered. He saved my life in Berlin. Keanu turned, his eyes dark but steady. No, he said, voice low and controlled. He made you owe him. That's not saving. That's ownership. His tone was calm, but there was a flicker of emotion. The kind that burns quietly until it consumes everything. A sudden click broke the tension, the sound of a rifle loading from somewhere above. Keanu's instincts took over. In one fluid motion, he pushed Tom aside as a bullet shattered the glass behind him. The room erupted in chaos. Shards of glass rained like ice, and the echo of gunfire filled the storm. Keanu rolled behind a pillar, returning fire, his movements precise and effortless. Tom grabbed the laptop, diving for cover as the feed went static. Through the broken window, Marcus's voice rang out faintly through an earpiece on the table. "You can't fight a ghost, boys." Keanu reloaded, his jaw tightening as he looked at Tom. "Then we make the ghost bleed." As the storm raged outside, the betrayal became a fire inside both men, not just anger, but purpose. Marcus Hale had turned them into pawns, but in that moment, something changed. This wasn't about the mission anymore. This was war. Keanu and Tom exchanged a silent nod, the kind only soldiers share when they know there's no going back. The lightning outside illuminated their faces, determined, scarred, and resolute. The betrayer had revealed himself, but he had also awakened something far more dangerous. Two men with nothing left to lose. The night sky burned with streaks of lightning as the storm rolled over the ocean. The rogue agency's headquarters sat perched on the cliffs, a fortress of steel and glass built on lies. Keanu and Tom stood at the edge of the access tunnel, drenched and silent, their faces lit by the glow of their final mission briefing. The air between them was thick with what wasn't said, the pain of betrayal, the ghosts of the past, and the grim knowledge that this was the endgame. Keanu checked his watch, its face cracked and ticking unevenly. "Once we breach, there's no going back," he said quietly. Tom smirked, his breath visible in the cold air. "Since when do we ever go back?" They moved like shadows through the rain, slipping into the heart of the compound. Inside, the corridors pulsed with red emergency lights, alarms faintly echoing through the walls. Every corner felt haunted, not by people, but by the memories of missions gone wrong. Keanu's mind flashed with moments of trust, of Marcus's voice guiding them through impossible odds. Now that same voice was the one orchestrating their downfall. As they approached the command center, Tom's earpiece crackled. "He's watching," he said under his breath. Keanu didn't slow down. "Then let him watch." With a precise motion, he breached the door, and the two men entered the heart of the operation. The room was a cathedral of technology, glowing monitors, suspended drones, and in the center, a single transmission terminal humming with life. On the screen, Marcus Hale's face appeared once more, calm and composed as though he were already immortal. "You really don't understand, do you?" Marcus began, his tone almost fatherly. "The world needs men like us to make hard choices, to rewrite the rules." Keanu lowered his gun slightly, stepping forward. "You rewrote the truth," he said, voice low. "And now, we're here to erase your version." Tom began typing furiously, his fingers flying over the console. "He's transmitting the entire database to every agency on the planet," he called out. "We've got less than 2 minutes before his lies become global." Marcus smirked. "You think truth will save you. Truth doesn't change anything. Control does." His words echoed through the metallic room as the rain pounded harder outside. Keanu's gaze was unshaken. "Then let's end your control." He raised his weapon and fired, not at Marcus's image, but at the transmission core itself. Sparks exploded across the room, the lights flickered, and a deep rumble shook the floor. The system went into meltdown, alarms screaming. Tom pulled the backup drive free, shoving it into Keanu's hands. "Go. The data's clean. It's the truth, everything he tried to bury." But Marcus's voice returned, now laced with fury. "You can't win this. You destroy me, and the world still belongs to men like me." Keanu looked at the live feed. Marcus standing in his private control room overlooking the ocean, the storm raging behind him. "Then I'll make sure the world remembers you for what you are," Keanu said. Without hesitation, he activated the remote detonation sequence. The fortress began to quake as flames erupted through the corridors. Keanu and Tom sprinted through the collapsing structure, glass shattering, steel twisting. In the distance, Marcus's tower exploded in a burst of light that tore through the night sky. The sound was deafening, but beneath it, there was silence, the kind of silence that comes only after justice. Outside, on the cliff's edge, Keanu and Tom watched the inferno fade into the horizon. The rain washed the blood and ash from their faces. Tom turned to Keanu, breathing heavily. "So what now?" he asked. Keanu stared out at the burning sea, the faint glow reflecting in his eyes. "Now," he said softly, "we rebuild what truth really means." He dropped the drive into the wet sand, the only surviving proof of everything that happened. As the waves began to swallow it, The first light of dawn broke over the water. Two soldiers stood side by side, scarred, betrayed, but unbroken. The storm had passed. The world would never know their names. But somewhere in the silence that followed, the truth finally spoke, not through power, not through control, but through the courage of two men who refused to be forgotten.